This show is part of OnePlace, a daily network of focused briefings across the stories people follow most.
Welcome to our daily roundup. We are diving into the biggest headlines in global security, domestic politics, and the economy to keep you informed on the events shaping our world today.
Iran submits a 14-point response to end the war.
Germany prepares for the withdrawal of 5,000 American troops.
Trump signals even deeper. Military cuts are coming for Germany.
Spirit Airlines collapses as the first casualty of Iran's war.
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth faces a heated congressional hearing.
Republican primaries test Trump's influence over the party's future.
GOP lawmakers warn troop cuts send a dangerous signal.
President Trump goes on a late-night social media spree.
Starting with the Middle East, Iran has officially submitted a 14-point response to the United States' proposal aimed at ending the conflict that ignited back in late February. According to Iranian state media, this counterproposal includes several high-stakes demands that deviate significantly from the American framework. Most notably, Iran is calling for a total resolution of all issues and an end to the war within a tight 30-day window. This stands in sharp contrast to the 2-month ceasefire originally suggested by the U.S. government. The Iranian plan also lists a series of prerequisites for peace, including formal guarantees against any future military aggression and the complete withdrawal of U.S. forces from the regions surrounding Iran. They are also demanding an end to the naval blockade, the release of frozen assets, and the payment of reparations. It is a comprehensive list that seeks to fundamentally shift the regional power balance, while ending the current hostilities.
The complexity of these demands cannot be overstated, especially as they include a new mechanism for governing the Strait of Hormuz and a requirement to end fighting in Lebanon. While an Iranian official confirmed the document was handed over to Pakistan, the specific terms were not initially disclosed to the public. President Trump has acknowledged receipt of the proposal and stated he is currently reviewing it, though his initial reaction was far from enthusiastic. He told reporters that while Iran clearly wants to make a deal, he is not satisfied with the terms presented so far. This follows a previous 15-point framework from the U.S. that demanded the full reopening of the Strait of Hormuz and a definitive end to Iran's nuclear program. With both sides holding firm on their core requirements, the path to a diplomatic resolution remains fraught with significant obstacles and deep-seated mutual distrust.
Now to European security. German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius is attempting to maintain a sense of calm following the Pentagon's announcement that it will withdraw approximately 5,000 troops from Germany. Pistorius described the move as anticipated and emphasized that Germany is prepared to take on a larger share of its own defense burden. He noted that while the presence of American troops is in the mutual interest of both nations, Germany must focus on strengthening the European pillar within the NATO alliance. This withdrawal, expected to be completed over the next 6 to 12 months, would still leave over 30,000 U.S. service members in the country. However, it represents a significant reversal of the military buildup that occurred after Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022. The decision has sparked widespread concern among European allies who worry about the long-term durability of the transatlantic partnership and America's commitment to the continent's security.
The timing of this announcement is particularly notable, coming shortly after German Chancellor Friedrich Merz criticized the U.S. strategy in the Iran conflict, suggesting the U.S. was being humiliated. This isn't the first time a troop reduction has been proposed. President Trump attempted a similar move in 2020, which was later reversed by the Biden administration. Currently, Germany is already in the midst of a historic expansion of its military capabilities. Under Chancellor Merz, the country is on track to spend more than 3% of its GDP on defense by next year, which is well above the NATO benchmark of 2%. NATO spokespeople have indicated they are working closely with Washington to understand the full details of the withdrawal. They suggest that this move underscores an urgent need for European members to invest more heavily in their own sovereign defense capabilities to ensure regional stability.
Continuing with troop cuts, President Trump has escalated the tension regarding military presence in Europe by stating that the U.S. will reduce its troop count in Germany by a lot more than the initial 5,000 announced by the Pentagon. Speaking from Florida, the president did not provide a specific reason for the further cuts, but made it clear that a much larger reduction is on the horizon. This move appears to be part of a broader effort to scale back America's long-standing commitment to European security, a stance that has put him at odds with Chancellor Friedrich Merz. The president's comments suggest a deepening rift with European allies, particularly as he expresses frustration over their reluctance to support his military campaign against Iran. This friction is not limited to defense. Trump also accused the European Union of failing to comply with trade deals and announced plans to hike tariffs on European vehicles to 25%.
The planned withdrawal is meeting significant bipartisan resistance back in Washington. Democrats have been quick to criticize the move, and even many Republicans are expressing concern that reducing the American footprint in Germany sends the wrong signal to Vladimir Putin. Critics argue that the decision seems more rooted in political friction than in a coherent national security strategy. While German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius has tried to downplay the impact, the reality of losing a significant portion of the 36,000 active-duty troops stationed there is a major shift. The president has lashed out at several European leaders, including those from Spain and the UK, further complicating the diplomatic landscape. As the administration moves forward with these cuts, the debate over the future of NATO and the role of the United States as a global security guarantor is becoming increasingly polarized and intense both at home and abroad.
Turning to the economy, Spirit Airlines has officially ceased all operations, marking the first major corporate casualty of the ongoing war with Iran. The discount carrier, which was already in bankruptcy proceedings, failed to secure the necessary creditor support for a government-led bailout plan. The collapse comes after jet fuel prices doubled over the last 2 months due to the conflict, creating an insurmountable financial burden for the airline. This shutdown will result in the loss of thousands of jobs and is a significant blow to President Trump's efforts to save the company. He had proposed a $500 million rescue package, but the plan faced stiff opposition from his own advisors and many members of Congress. Spirit was a major player in the budget travel market, accounting for 5% of all U.S. flights at its peak, and its absence is expected to lead to higher fares for consumers.
The airline's board meeting ended without a rescue agreement, leading to the immediate cancellation of all scheduled flights. Passengers have been advised not to go to the airport as the company begins an orderly wind-down of its operations. The surge in oil prices following U.S. and Israeli strikes on Iran has created the worst crisis for the global aviation industry since the pandemic. While Spirit was already struggling to adapt to changing traveler preferences, the fuel shock proved to be the final straw. Interestingly, the shutdown is expected to benefit Spirit's rivals, such as JetBlue and Frontier Airlines, who saw their stock prices rise following the news. JetBlue has already announced plans to expand its service in key markets previously dominated by Spirit. This liquidation is the first of its size in 2 decades, signaling a potentially volatile period ahead for the entire transportation sector as the war continues.
Next, the Hegseth testimony. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth faced a grueling and often heated 2-day congressional testimony this week. The proceedings were marked by sharp exchanges, particularly with Democratic Representative John Garamendi, who accused the administration of getting the country stuck in a quagmire in the Middle East. Hegseth fired back, defending the military's actions as a courageous effort to confront a nuclear Iran and accusing critics of handing propaganda to the nation's enemies. Much of the hearing focused on the administration's massive 2027 military budget proposal, which seeks a historic $1.5 trillion in defense spending. Hegseth argued that this level of funding is essential to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon, despite some skepticism regarding the current status of Iran's nuclear capabilities. The secretary remained firm in his stance that the military strategy is creating strategic opportunities, even as he faced intense questioning from committee members.
Despite Hegseth's forceful defense, public opinion and congressional sentiment remain deeply divided. A recent poll found that 61% of U.S. adults believe the use of military force against Iran was a mistake. During the hearing, a key point of contention was the legal authorization for the war. Hegseth argued that the 60-day window for seeking congressional approval had not yet passed because of the ceasefire, but many lawmakers remained unconvinced by this interpretation of the law. The debate also touched on whether a naval blockade constitutes a use of military force that requires specific authorization. While Hegseth attempted to make a compelling case for the administration's policies, he struggled to win over skeptical committee members. The testimony highlighted the growing friction between the executive branch and Congress over war powers and the long-term financial costs of the current military engagements in the Middle East.
Shifting to domestic politics, President Trump's influence within the Republican Party is facing a major stress test as several high-profile primary elections approach in Indiana, Kentucky, and Louisiana. These races feature entrenched GOP officials who are fighting back against challengers backed by the president. Early signs suggest that Trump's preferred candidates may not have the easy path to victory that many expected. For instance, Representative Thomas Massie and Senator Bill Cassidy are both facing Trump-backed opposition but remain competitive in their respective districts. These officials have all crossed the president in various ways, from voting for impeachment to defying orders on redistricting. The results of these primaries will be a stark indicator of whether the president's legendary sway over the party is beginning to fade, especially as his popularity faces new challenges. If these incumbents manage to hold on to their seats, it could signal a shift in the party's internal dynamics.
While none of these candidates are running on an explicitly anti-Trump platform, they are taking care to emphasize their independence. Representative Massey noted that many of his supporters appreciate that he isn't a rubber stamp for the administration. Republican strategists acknowledge that while Trump remains the party's most powerful figure, his endorsement might now be valued more for the associated funding from his super PAC than for its ability to move voters. Some observers point out that the president has less time to dedicate to these local races than he did in previous cycles. Furthermore, the fallout from the Epstein files and the ongoing war in Iran may be shrinking the core group of voters who follow his every directive. A string of losses for Trump-backed candidates could give other Republicans the political space to distance themselves from the president as they look toward the general elections in November.
Back to the troop cuts. Two senior Republican lawmakers, Roger Wicker and Mike Rogers, have publicly criticized the Pentagon's decision to cut 5,000 troops from Germany. As chairs of the Senate and House Armed Services Committees, they warned that the move risks undermining deterrence and sends a dangerous signal to Russian President Vladimir Putin. Instead of a full withdrawal, they suggested that these forces should be moved further east to bolster the front lines of the NATO alliance. Their joint statement expressed deep concern that reducing America's forward presence in Europe is premature, especially as European allies are just beginning to significantly increase their own defense spending. This internal GOP criticism highlights a growing divide within the party regarding foreign policy and the best way to manage relations with both Russia and traditional European allies. They argue that maintaining a strong deterrent is vital for American interests and regional stability.
The criticism isn't just coming from Republicans. Representative Adam Smith, the senior Democrat on the House Armed Services Committee, called the decision incoherent and suggested it was based on the president's personal feelings rather than national security strategy. However, the administration does have its defenders. Representative Clay Higgins supported the move, even suggesting that the troops should be replaced by members of the Senate in a jab at the upper chamber's perceived inactivity. This debate comes at a time when the U.S. has over 36,000 active-duty troops in Germany, a presence that has been a cornerstone of European security for decades. The Pentagon maintains that the withdrawal follows a thorough review of theater requirements and ground conditions. As the administration signals that even more cuts could be coming, the tension between the White House and congressional leaders over the future of the U.S. military footprint in Europe continues to escalate.
Finally, the social spree. President Trump engaged in a rapid-fire social media spree late Friday night, posting 11 times in just 42 minutes on Truth Social. The posts included a variety of images, some of which appeared to be AI-generated. One notable image depicted the president in swim trunks, floating on a gold inflatable chair in the Lincoln Memorial reflecting pool, alongside Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio. The water in the image was a deep blue, reflecting Trump's proposed renovations for the site. Other posts featured images of First Lady Melania Trump and various members of the administration. He also shared an image of House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, whom he labeled a danger to the country. This flurry of activity is characteristic of the president's direct communication style, often using provocative imagery and sharp language to engage his base and criticize his political opponents during the late hours.
The spree also included an altered image of Trump holding a hand of wild cards from the game Uno, with a caption stating he has all the cards. Several posts focused on the Lincoln Memorial reflecting pool, comparing images of the pool with algae, labeled as being from the Obama era, to edited images showing clear blue water under his administration. He described the new look as American flag blue. Other images shared during the 45-minute window included his face superimposed on Mount Rushmore and a photo of himself with King Charles III. This social media blitz serves as a reminder of the president's ongoing focus on his public image and his use of digital platforms to bypass traditional media. The mix of personal photos, political attacks, and stylized illustrations provides a window into the themes he continues to prioritize as he navigates multiple domestic and international challenges.
That concludes our roundup for today. Thank you for joining us for these essential updates. Be sure to follow the show for your next daily briefing on the stories that matter most.